All right, you're welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana. We're live from the Akua Bohema studio at North Ridge. My name is Ania Fompo for now. Today we'll be talking, of course, economics or the economy. We know that the monetary policy decision will come out shortly, and that's if has not even come out already. And Winston Taki will help us understand what's going on with the Bank of Ghana, if the policy rate is going to be changing, what is the economic structure that's going to be or that will be adopted by the country. Also, other issues would bother on the cabinet meeting over the weekend, some of the decisions to be taken by government. We've already been told by the Information Ministry some of the decisions haven't been taken, and we're expecting that the corresponding ministries will take charge and, roll out the policies as and when the Finance Ministry, Agric Ministry, and all other correspondence ministries that are, having some intertwined work as far as the economy is concerned, will take upon themselves the responsibility of doing what they have to do as soon as possible. And then they will tell us what to do to bring the economy back on track. His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has already indicated that we have to take the economy back to where it was in 2019 before COVID struck. So today we'll be expecting to speak with Dr. Jerry Monfant. He is an external monetary policy advisor at EFRAG EU. He'll be speaking to us. And then we'll also have an interview with Dr. J.K. Kwachi, the Senior Economist and Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA. We'll have an interview with him. We'll be speaking. In fact, we'll be playing the interview for you to get his point of view, where he is coming from. And then Winston Taki, my colleague here, broadcast journalist, and also on the business desk, who will join me in the studio. We'll be doing some analysis on some of the issues that will come up. So this is Good Afternoon, Ghana. This is Ania Fompo. We'll take a break. I'll be back shortly. All right, you're welcome back. Now, I've been joined in the studio by Winston Taki, my colleague, who is on the business desk for us to go through the issues on the economy. First, we're delving into the President's cabinet meeting over the weekend, the reviews that came out, and what we have to do, what we're expecting the central government to be doing, the ideas that they have to put together. So I read here first. Winston, you're welcome. Good afternoon. Now we're all not sleeping because we don't have to sleep until we bring the economy back to 2019 then, as the president is requesting. So President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo chaired a 3-day crunch meeting to address the recent economic challenges confronting the nation. And the meeting stems from the continuous depreciation of the cedi and recent increment in fuel prices stemming from global pressures. The deliberations, which started Friday at the Pedro State Lodge, expected to end Sunday, March 20, 2022, has in attendance all MPP, MPs, ministers, government appointees, and leaders of the ruling New Patriotic Party. Now, the discussions also were expected to profess solutions to the pressing economic conditions transforming the economy. First, let me ask you, when you heard that we were going into such a crunch meeting, in fact, it was cabinet meeting, but this is, of course, a special one. What were you expecting?
I think it was long overdue, and it should have been started earlier, that is in January, basically, because all these factors started unfolding right after the Russia-Ukraine invasion happened. And you know that certainly there's a ripple effect of every happening on the global front. And as a nation, Ghana, we should know that the shocks will hit us, because in December 2021, I had an analysis with Bright on this particular platform, and I made him understand that in the first month of January, there's going to be a global shock in terms of commodity prices. And within less than a week, we started seeing what was happening in terms of the Russian invasion, Ukraine crisis. And when this began, the ripple effect was that the commodity market started seeing boom while the stock market started crashing. So the global stock market experienced a very depreciating issues that currently is still struggling to recover. But on a local front, this meeting that the president called was critical because we realized that we're losing control over our currency, that is the cedi, against the dollar and against other major global trading currencies. So as in the first week of January, that is in January, we realized that the cedi depreciated by negative 0.3%. That then was selling at 23 pesos. And also in February, it started also depreciating further by negative 0.3%, which is negative 9%, to sell at 60 pesos. And in this month of March, we are experiencing a negative 14.6%. That is approximately 43% jump in that angle. So all these factors cumulatively make us understand that as a nation, we need to sit down and reassess our economic structure going forward.
So, I mean, let me just capture some of the issues that came out. And this was officially, some of the papers actually captured it, but the official release from the Information Ministry stated that the cabinet has held a first of its quarterly retreats from the 2020 between the 17th and 20th of March at Peduasi Lodge, Ibri, in the Eastern region. Now, in addition, the scheduled appraisal of the performance of government programs, Cabinet also extensively discussed the impact of global economic difficulties on Ghana and the Ghanaian people. Now, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo approved a number of far-reaching measures. So it means that measures were presented by the corresponding ministries aimed at mitigating the depreciation of the cedi, ensuring expenditure discipline, and providing relief in the face of global fuel price hikes and inflation, as well as ensuring that priority programs meant to grow the economy are protected. I want to believe that priority programs include Obatampa Care,
Planting for Food and Jobs,
Planting for Food and Jobs,
all those social intervention programs basically need to be reviewed. And that was the same call by the IEA. I spoke with Dr. John Kwache last week, and one factor he made mention of the fact that we need to review our expenditure structure, and when that is done, it will basically position us to control what we have in terms of revenue and also what to spend on in terms of expenditure.
Well, so I think we are also expecting, it says that mitigation of the cedi. You know, there's been the discussion of we ensuring that we, one of the fallouts from this crunch meeting is that government is intending to pump $2 billion into the economy to shore up the cedi. And we've had economy analysis of the fact that shoring up dollars into the system is really not going to do much. It would only give you a temporal measure. And as far back as I can remember, pumping dollars into the system has always been the government's short-term intervention. And as obviously it has always been a short-term intervention. So since I can recall that dollars were being pumped into the system to shore up cedis, why have we not been able to develop any long-term plan for, to boost the courage or our hopes within the local currency, the cedi?
Now, when this conversation began, the first point of call was the AGI, that is the industries.
Yes.
If you don't have a strong core structure, basically, where industries drive the economy, or where the ways of doing business, the cost of doing business is minimal, you'll find out that you tend to manage at a higher risk. And the cases where we are make mention of the fact that we keep pumping more dollars into the system, we need to ask ourselves, who are the managers, how many countries, how many businesses or companies are owned by Ghanaians? How many factories are owned by Ghanaians? When they make profit, where does this profit go to? Does it stay in the system or are they repatriated? And when they are being repatriated, are they being exchanged into dollars? In that case, whatever amount of dollars we pump in will surely find their way out of their system. So the measures to mitigate this is to ensure that we have control over our forex, how forex move, both at our borders, how much you bring into the country, how much you take out of the country. This way will help control the forex outtake, basically. Because if in US like this, that's what they do. You can, if you're going to US, they'll ask you how much money you have in an account. If you go there, how much you're coming out of, they'll assess you because they want to know the outtake and intake of monies in the system. So if you have policies to that effect, trust me, we can, in a way, challenge what we are losing now. But in the case where we need to have industry striving, we have to ensure that the cost of doing business is low, the interest rate is low. But with this current monetary policy rate that has been released by the Bank of Ghana, which currently stands at 17%, it was then at 14.5%. Now it's now at 17%, meaning that
it was before. It was when
14.5%.
14.5%.
Exactly.
It's now what? 17.
17%.
Okay, I've not been updated on that. So it's now 17%.
Yes.
So you can imagine the reflection on that on interest rates.
Certainly. So we expect to see a direct reflection on interest rate in the subsequent week. The banks will review how much it costs to have access to loan. Already, the cost of loan is high in the country.
It's 17% now.
Yeah. The borders are closed. Now, access to raw materials, access to connectivity in terms of trade has been limited. So, in a way, it looks good because we are doing that as a temporary measure to protect the cedi. But if you look down at the macro level, it's really going to be disturbing for businesses in the short run.
The 17% just scared me. It just scared me. Well, let me read. This one said that the Bank of Ghana Monetary Policy Committee has increased the monetary policy rate from 14.5% to 17%. This, according to Ernest Addison, is as a result of tight global economic conditions. So he said the increase by 250 basis points is expected to strengthen the cedi. That is interesting. Were you there when the meeting was being held?
No, I was here, but I got a report from sources from there. The details.
I really wanted to understand the body language of the governor.
He was very solemn, monitoring it from Metro TV. We took it live while he was presenting. It was solemn and calm, collected, and it seems like he doesn't want to loud it out with regards to the numbers and figures. Looking at the report, some of the factors that came up was that when you look at our commodity outtake, how much we export and how much we're making, it seems we made more money because of the boom in commodity prices.
Yeah.
Gold initially was selling, in January, we exported gold to the tune of 392.9 billion Ghana cedis. And by February, we're now exporting 885.2 billion Ghana cedis. And cocoa was also at the price of, we're exporting cocoa to the tune of 294.1 billion. And in February, we started going higher by 596.8 billion. Same with oil, which doubled basically. That is from January to February. So we made gains on the commodity market. And the call then by analysts and economists was that if there's a windfall in terms of prices, why don't you use it to mitigate the burden of ordinary Ghanaian? Okay,
so let me read this from Professor Gachi. It says that the Dean of Cape Coast University Business School, Professor John Gachi, has proposed that government makes use of the Price Stabilization Fund of Petroleum Price to cushion the Ghanaian people and save the ailing economy. You know, when you have statutory funds set up, you can generate revenue into the statutory funds when your revenue generation points is indeed liquid.
Yeah.
But how liquid is our revenue generation points? If we have to benefit from windfall, how much are we benefiting from windfall? If the economy was based on production, you know, right now we are obviously not based on production. It's not a production economy. We're trying to drive it onto a production economy. But how do we do that? You know, I feel like transforming ourselves from exports or import dependency onto exports or a production economy, we would really to be at some crunch period before we can do a total transformation. Do you get my point?
I get your point. You know,
and I don't know how that is going to be
Got a difficult
Very
challenge.
difficult for any government to let the people understand that it will get very crunchy at some point before we can
Annie,
transfer.
I've listened to the Importers and Exporters Association speak. I've listened to AGI speak because that's what I do. And I've listened to experts speak. But my conclusion of the matter is, in as much as there are demands in the industry, there are calls for reduction in this benchmark value, there are calls for controlling the cedi. What we need now is a policy framework. We need a strategic policy framework that is binded by law. Because if you don't have that, trust me, we'll come back to the same table. Because right now, how much we should trade or import in terms of percentage is not really controlled. How much we should export in terms of percentage is not really controlled. How much industries are supposed to be the target for local industries to meet in order to shortchange importation that has not really been released. So all these factors, because now, because of the case of we bring in outside companies to come and manufacture in this country, give them freebies in terms of tax holidays and all. This is what is really killing us. We have a lot of companies who are, for the past 5 years or so.
But is this time that we really have to hurriedly amend our tax laws, which we're trying to do in Parliament, and it almost looks like e-levy is stalling almost everything. Because by now, we should be dealing with our tax holidays because we need the money. It's a now situation. But the companies are operating now. So when we are able to, amend the laws and make sure that some of these holidays is not really doing any good to Ghana, we can definitely generate some revenues from there. And then if the budget cuts, as the government is indicating, if it really has cut budgets, it's also going to generate some monies from there. Because for now, e-levy has not been implemented. This morning, I read an article from one of our colleagues, who's a journalist, but is outside the country now, Pakwesi, and he's talking about the Momo platform. And listen to this. So he says that, I'm trying to open. Okay, he says, government budget in limbo. Is a question. Government budget in limbo. Momo transactions dipped further by 6.7 billion cedis in January. 6.7 billion cedis in January. It's e-levy we're looking at this same platform to generate money for e-levy. So it says that the total value of mobile money transactions has dropped significantly by 6.7 billion cedis. Sometimes just talk about it can affect the economy. It can affect transactions.
Annie, there's something in business there's a term in business called consumer psychology.
Yeah.
That if you don't assess how consumers behave towards a product, you are likely to lose his interest or to lose revenue just by how you target it. The digital space has consistently built a brand, a solid hallmark for itself over the years. And due to that, the number of banked population increased due to the fact that now, instead of going to the banks to go and register or create an account, it's easy for you to just use your same identity, which is your phone number, where you have ID registered to transact businesses. So you go to a place, you buy a product, and they tell you that, do you have cash? It's, oh, I have Momo. Can you take Momo? Yes. Even assorted sellers, some of them take Momo. You go to the market, tomato sellers, they understand Momo because they see Momo as bank, and that is digital currency. So with the onset of the e-levy and the controversy around it, the best thing government should have considered, irrespective of the amount of money that was targeted, was to withdraw. Because if you withdrew, then you bring hope into that confidence into that space. Because the more the call, I foresee, the right call was to target the players in the industry, not the consumer. Because no matter how much you make, it is the same consumers who bring you the money. Now, you've negatively influenced the outcome of budgeted revenue by these telcos. Trust me, they do not make as much as they demand, irrespective of the conversation that is going on. Because the
telcos are also directly consumers of government service provision. Okay.
Yeah, so people don't usually make call to call now. They only make digital calls, using WhatsApp and all the cheap platform because of the cost of making a call. So all these are elements that government needs to refocus and reassess. Because if you keep moving in a way and you keep hating something, the best approach is to re-strategize. And right now, that's what we need.
And not
now.
insist on the same thing?
No.
In the business environment, is that how it works?
No. In the business environment, when you try a formula and it doesn't work, doesn't mean the formula is wrong. It means the timing probably may be wrong. So you have to pull it back and try a more lenient approach that will give you access into the market. Right now, the e-levy doesn't have access. E-levy doesn't have access. So the best approach is to withdraw, work it out, make it more convenient or easily sellable or tradable to the people. Because right now, it is not mass selling. I'm speaking as an economist and as a businessman and as a journalist who understands what is happening currently in the industry.
So, Winston, hold on. Let's go on to the phone lines and speak with Dr. Jerry Moffan, External Monetary Policy Advisor at EFRAG EU. Yeah, okay, so I'm told he's actually via Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Moffan, and you're welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana. So, the news reaching us now is that the... Yeah. Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much. So we've just been updated that the policy rate, which was at 14.5%, is now being moved to 17%. And the Bank of Ghana has obviously cited economic challenges, global economic challenges as reasons. Do you see the economic crunch intensifying going forward?
Yes, it will intensify because it will intensify. When the economy is having a problem, it is quite unfortunate. We have the inflation rate that was expected to spike up globally. And that was somewhere last year that this started when the Fed actually announced that it will be increasing much of its interest rates for about more than 3 times in 2022. Now, the saddest issue is that, as of then, the Central Bank of Ghana never got prepared. Neither did the fiscal side prepare against it. They did not. The challenge that we're going to face is going to be in 2 folds. Now, one of it is that the financial crisis is not going to tend to be economic crisis. That is certainly going to mean that people income levels are going to reduce considerably. They're not going to have what they're supposed.
We're having a conversation with Dr. Jerry Moffan, who is the External Monetary Policy Advisor. I think we're having some challenges with. Okay, Mr. Moffan, you're back. So take that line again, the last line before the scrabble.
Oh, okay. What I'm trying to say is that we're going to have a lot of dwindling unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is going to. We're going to have a high unemployment rate. Sorry, we're going to have a very high unemployment rate. Situation is going to be very hard because what is going to happen is that standard of living is really going to be very much more harder. When countries and central banks were preparing during those years, at the later part of the 2022, the Ghanaian central bank never got prepared. And then the fiscal policy after that was never also prepared. And for that matter, during this critical time,
oh, we're really struggling with Mr. Moffan's phone lines. This is rather frustrating. Mr. Moffan, can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir? Oh, this is really a struggle. He made, 2 major points I think are captured. The Bank of Ghana unprepared, and also there's going to be increase in unemployment.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask a follow-up question. I'm sure producers will try and get him back. I wanted to ask him a follow-up question, where the unemployment are going to come up from.
Like initially we were making a point that the cost of doing business is going to go high because currently businesses will need more money to run their operations. The overhead costs are going to increase. Already, inflation has hit their revenue projections. Now, with this onset of the new monetary policy rate, the interest rate is going to go high. Indirectly, meaning they have to cut down what they used to do previously in terms of human hands and access to easy and cheaper way of doing business. That way, that is the only way they can survive. We just came out of a pandemic, and the hopes and revitalization project or programs that government intends to run or is running currently seems not to be showing much viable results.
Okay, let's go back to Mr. Moffan. He's back, but this time on phone. Let's see if this one's going to be effective now. Mr. Moffan, so you talk about the Bank of Ghana, which was not prepared and has never been prepared. Unemployment rate is going to increase. First of all, let me tackle the Bank of Ghana. How do you say they were not prepared? I mean, global shocks sometimes does not knock at your doors before they hit.
No, they knock at your door. There are tell signs. There's a lot of signs for you to see before unfortunate issues happened. And one of it has got to do with the way we were borrowing. What we do is that we do rollover loans. We borrow to repay debt and re-borrow again to repay debt. And that is what we call the Ponzi financing. So these indicators were clear indicators that we will get to a place that we would hit a wall. Indeed, as of last year, somewhere around September to October thereabout, the Fed, which is the federal bank in the United States, made it clear that indeed they were going to hike up interest rates about 3 times within the course of 2022. And that was immediately cause for a serious worry to any other economists who should also know. The second aspect of it too is that the challenge in which has brought us to this level has also been the reason being caused by the central bank once more. There is a situation that they started in 2017, 2018. And this has got to do with the banking sector crisis, which they call it a cleanup. Indeed, it was a systemic crisis. Back then I held up a public lecture and I made the public understand that, look, when you use a wrong tools to fight for the wrong problems, you would end up exacerbating your problem. And this is what has happened. A typical example of it is that the situation that happened that time before the government went with the cleaning up and revoking licenses here and there was what we call systemic crisis. It was not a typical banking crisis. And during a systemic crisis, you don't necessarily go revoking licenses because they were not a typical banking crisis. Now, once they did that, the economic productivity came up standing still for a period of more than 2 years, because at the end of the day, the government needed to pay almost about 21 billion to the people who were having their deposit in banks and microfinances.
Right.
Now, I'm coming. I am just building a point. Now, if this thing were done, what certainly means is that if the productivity is low, your revenue levels would go down because people were not growing any other thing. So therefore, if you are able to do this, you keep on building up the problems, and it will be lumping up. Now, as it's lumping up, it's gotten to a point in time that your revenue collection is not enough to even satisfy your creditors. So you have to resort to e-levy. Now, let's take the e-levy aside. The global inflation has actually come up. My reason for the fact that the central bank was not prepared is this. Usually when there is inflation flowing up, you don't look at increasing interest rate at that moment. Increasing interest rate or increasing the policy rate has got a time and purpose. It is not at the very time that you have prices of commodities running very high. One of the other policies you could use would be that you might decide to subsidize prices of commodities just to make sure you ease up the pressure on the citizens. Once you ease up the pressure on the citizens, it will lower down the inflationary steps. It will push it more down. The second aspect of it is that the inflation are actually imported inflations. These are not inflation originated from within. How was it imported? It is equally important because the government have engineered a lot of borrowing into the country. And while you are borrowing into the country, you are sponsoring much more import into the country than an export. And as you generate an import-led economy, what will certainly happen is that when there is a spike of inflation outside the country, your country is also directly hit, and that is where we are.
So this inflation that we have, it is not inflation, it's not a domestic inflation, it's an imported inflation. So if you want to stop imported inflation, the simple mechanism you do is that you either try as much as possible to implement immediate substitute products that has got the related imported ones. That is the first thing that you do. And then the second aspect of it is that you try as much as possible to lower down the prices. You have to stabilize prices. And to stabilize prices at this point in time, probably might mean doing an injection to be able to stabilize prices. When you stabilize prices, inflation will definitely go down. But let me tell you, if you go ahead and increase the policy rate higher than the level, up to this level that we are, the challenge that we're going to have is that now there will not be borrowing, so financial transmission into the economy will be locked out, it will be choked. So money will not be into the economy. That's the first thing, because the banks will not be getting money out. So that's the first thing. And once money is not going into the system because of the borrowing cost, the challenge that we're going to have is that there is no way we're going to make it. There's no way we're going to make it. Yes.
Mr. Alpha, is it the imported inflation? What are these factors that accounted to that? Is it our borrowing?
No, yes. The reason that accounted to that is that, one, in the first place, we rely heavily on imported oil. We don't have it here. The previous government, I think they established a refinery, but the refinery was never used. So therefore, we depend absolutely on fuel prices. Secondly, we are looking at even the deliberate taxes on building materials. That has got to do with tenants, where people would have to rent and stay. That makes it more expensive to rent a building now than probably even to build. That is true. And this is all managerial failures. They are policy failures that has led up to that level. That's one. So, and also putting that one aside, even toothpick, we import toothpick into this country. So what we do is that we have the inflationary basket. Let's look at the inflationary basket. Once we look at the inflationary basket, that is what we call the consumer pricing index. Now, once we look at this consumer pricing index, we can decide that, look, let's subsidize items within this index. That necessarily would be able to bring prices down. Because if food prices go up, if rent prices go up, if fuel prices go up, certainly it means the economy is collapsing. It doesn't bring a standard to the economy. So if the government has imported, and all this was I'm talking about, most of the materials that we use in accomplishing this are mostly imported and not domestically generated. So when you look at the very time this inflationary pressure started, the United States asked Japan, they asked other countries that they have to lease their oil or their oil stocks into the market to be able to flood it and be able to subsidize the prices down. And I think they were in the course of doing before the Ukrainian and the Russian war started. So therefore, as at then, we have the intelligence at the Europe, we had intelligence, and we realized that the central bank, some of the central bank has actually putting up mechanisms in place by trying with their fiscal policy to see how to subsidize most of the domestic commodities, such a way that the inflationary pressures will not be too much on their country. As at then, when we looked at Ghana, we realized that there was no planning at all. This is what I want to mean. There was not even a slight planning that there is likely to be inflationary pressures. So most of the situation that we're going through are absolutely imported, and certainly it is self-inflicted. And it is managerial flaws. It is not just because it is coming from outside, and that is why it's slapped on us that we couldn't do. It is a typical managerial flaws. The management of it has been very poorly done. And that is why we are where we are. There is no way you can stop inflation. There is a way to stop up inflation. But it will be much more lazy way to sit down using a monetary tool like just hiking interest rate when the economy is slowing down. That is not done under the circumstances. This is my point on that.
Let's go back to the collapsing of banks.
Yes.
If you said that the Bank of Ghana
exactly was the starting point.
Yes, you said the Bank of Ghana did not plan. Meanwhile, I would say that the Bank of Ghana actually also led the whole activity of banks collapsing. So even worse of it is not about they not planning, but the fact that if this is where you're sitting your argument, I will add that they actually caused the situation or the crisis starting or beginning with the collapse of banks. Not so, because the effects of the banks collapsing is also very dire to the economy, or were dire to the economy, which we're still suffering from it now.
Exactly. That is the point. Because if you look at it, you see economic growth when the citizens' living standards improve. When the living standard of the citizens are not improving, the economy doesn't grow. One thing they don't know about economics is that they always think that it is the government that grows economy. It is not the government that grows economy. The government only provides leverage and levers to allow individuals to help grow. The contribution or the total contribution of the entire individual in the country constitute what we call the GDP growth of a country. So therefore, if people's money were there and you lock up their money, denying productivity into the country for a period of 2 years, you have slammed the economy. That is the way it is like. And suddenly it means that you have put in the economy directly in gallows. That is where we are. So to be honest with you, the challenge that we are facing today is not about the fact that we had a policy failure, but the fact is that we have incompetent and evil, weak, weak tools coming from both monetary and physical that has led to the collapse and the total destruction of the economy in which we are at the moment. Because certainly, if you are a monetary policy expert, you should know and ought to know that once you collapse a bank and immediately you are not paying people immediately and you did not plan for it, what is going to happen is that the people who are going to be affected are going to have their economic life equally being affected. That is the way it's going to be. So if your economic life is affected, don't expect any generation of revenue by government. You can eat your cake and have it. So if you have done that and their productivity has gone low as we speak at the moment, and today you are sitting down, you cannot get revenue, and you are now telling us that we should go and do e-levy. Under what circumstances do we do e-levy? To be able to generate money, to make sure we impress a creditor? What kind of economy do we run like this? So that is one bit of it. Now, before we even come down to the fact that when there is a problem, we have to come down to homegrown policies. You don't implement a homegrown policies when you are leading an import-led economy. The reason being that if the government will stop absolute borrowing and stop borrowing and let us restructure the current loan that he has gone to borrow, and then look inwardly and see how things would work, I think it will work. Secondly, I hope in January you realize that as of January 22nd, Fitch downgraded some 2 banks in Ghana. And the reason for their downgrade has been that, one, their exposure to the government is too high. EcoBank Ghana exposure to the government was about 43% on total asset. And then if you look at UBA asset exposure to the government, it's about 50%, which was too much. And the reason for their downgrade is that the government is heading towards the default. And because government is heading towards the default, they are not sure either EcoBank or UBA would be able to access their funds from the government to be able to run better. And that was the reason for the downgrade. So you realize that if we weaken the banking sector, and you realize EcoBank is the 2nd largest bank in Ghanaian economy. So therefore, if you decide to take off EcoBank out of it, and then you take UBA that was actually lending to the government, looking at it per quantum, this money could have gone to the private sector. It could have gone to the citizens. It could have generated, it could have led to generating more to be able to revive the economy. But now as we speak, these banks will not be able to give out. And let me tell you one thing very quickly, which is very economically technical, and that has actually also knocked most of the banks, that has actually led them resorted into giving money to government. The reason was this. You see, when you want to revive economy from a trouble, like when the COVID-19 came, and then we also had after the COVID-19 and the banking crisis that came, if you want to liberate the economy out of it, there is a 2-way angle that you might be looking at. One angle would be that, one, let's assume that I'm granting out loan or facility to companies for them to produce. The other side you should be thinking about is that, are the citizens having money to patronize what the company is going to produce? These are the 2 ways you should be thinking. If you are a very good economist and you have the monetary instinct. Now, don't forget, when there was a COVID-19, the people's money had already dwindled by the cost of banking sector crisis. That is one. So when COVID-19 came, it came to add, more pain to the wound. so certainly there is no money into the economy. So when the government came, the government attention was that we were ready to give monies to companies to be able to produce. And then when the companies produce, we believe that we'll revamp the economy. That will be the weakest way and ignorant way of running the economy. What you should have known is that you should find another way to settle out people. You have engineers. There is a reason why we have credit card usages in the developed country. The people must be able to be eased out by giving them some monies to allow them to be able to patronize what you are giving the company to go and produce. If the company produce and the people could not buy, we call it in economics as liquidity trap. It means that they have trapped you with the liquidity. You did to produce what you want to produce, but you're not getting buyers. This is what we call liquidity trap. So you may have to think two ways. Either if I sponsor a producer, I must sponsor a buyer. Because it's the demand and supply that moves together.
Right.
So you went and planned only one-sided.
Right.
And now one-sided, that has sparked what we call the non-performing loans. Because companies will collect the money, they can't pay back to the bank. And once they cannot pay back to the bank, you will see the spike of non-performing loans, and that is also coming to weaken your banking sector.
Right.
So as we said now, the banking sector is weakened, and now there is a stiffer transmission of money into the economy. Then you come back again and come and tell me that you are increasing monetary policy rate to about 17%. Then the economy is dead.
Right.
And that's what I mean.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So let's take a break now. You're still watching Good Afternoon, Ghana. We were talking to Dr. Jerry Mofan, and who is, being a bit really hard on the Bank of Ghana and the economy managers. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Winston, I think we just have to come back and then finalize. We're back. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. Now, let's go on to Dr. J.K. Kwache, who is a senior economist at the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA Ghana, who's also giving his opinion on how we have to do a few things. So let's just cross over to him and hear him.
I think that I can say that this year we are really in very difficult times. If you look at the major economic indicators, most of them are not doing that well. Well, in terms of economic growth, we don't have figures, current figures for this year. But last year, the first 3 or so quarters that Ghana Statistical Service provided, they were showing that at least the real sector, the economy was doing quite well. The quarter to quarter growths. We're doing quite well. But that is the real side. But then when we come to the management of the economy, the macro economy, as we put it, and you see that the indicators are not doing well at all. Inflation has risen so rapidly over the last few months, and it's standing at 15.7%, which is very high compared to Bank of Ghana's policy, the target of 8 plus or minus 2%. Meanwhile, the debt has also risen sharply to something like 80%, around 80% of GDP. The fiscal deficit is set to widen this year, and then we see that there's even a stalemate, budget stalemate in Parliament. In fact, that has generated some kind of uncertainty and dented confidence in the investor community. So we have seen as a result, on the local market, investors are disinvesting from our money market, from the capital market, and taking their dollars away. And then when you go to the international bond market too, again, our debt, the sovereign debt, has been downgraded by the credit rating agencies. And therefore, those who are holding the debt are getting rid of it, selling it at a discount. All these actions, put pressure on the cedi. And that's why we have seen the cedi depreciate sharply. In fact, today as I was coming, to the office, I went into the nearest forest bureau, that I know, and I was shocked to see that they were selling the dollar for 8.35. You know, I mean, the depreciation of the cedi this year, we haven't seen that for a very long time. But as I said, it is because of the lack of, investor confidence in the economy, and the lack of policy credibility, the fact that the budget is not being passed. This is what is causing, most of these problems. Of course, when it comes to inflation, that is a global phenomena. In other words, because of COVID, and supply chains have been disrupted, so we're seeing sharp increases in commodity prices, food prices, and fuel prices, and we are not immune from that. The world is a very small place, so we are also experiencing sharp increases in food prices, and then also fuel prices. And in Ghana, and in fact everywhere, when fuel prices go up, they affect virtually all other prices, transportation, rent, everything. We are in a serious situation, even if we don't want to call it crisis, but it's a serious economic situation which needs, the equally serious attention from government. I think as an economist, when I hear, that kind of talk, that Ghana doesn't have money, Ghana is broke. Okay, maybe on a short-term basis, in other words, taking the current situation, I can accept that. But why we should get here is what I have a problem with. This is a country that is endowed with, vast natural resources, from, agricultural resources to, mineral, natural resources. And people have done the calculations, and some have put the estimates of our natural wealth to over $10 trillion. That's sitting underground, and we are on top of it, and we say we are poor. But as I said, this is a long-term, kind of. But currently, you see, when the minister says Ghana has no money, he's looking at the budget. In other words, how much revenue, they are not able to raise enough revenue because e-levy, which they were relying on is locked up. They have indicated that they will take other measures to plug some of the loopholes, exemptions. They have put a bill before Parliament that has not been passed. They will enforce compliance more, and then other measures. But the budget is not being fully implemented. So on the revenue side, there's a big hole that is being created, okay? And then you go to the expenditure side also. Already Parliament has approved what they call the appropriations. In other words, they have said, government, you can go and spend, how much you said you are going to spend, okay? But they need revenue to do that. And they have not approved some of the elements, revenue elements. So even though they say you can go and spend, you don't have the money to go and spend. And that's why they have already said, oh, we will slash MDA's expenditures by 20%. I think that's a good thing. It's a good start, but I hope that they enforce it. And I also expect that they will extend it, the MDAs, when they talk about MDAs, I would expect a government, for instance, to take the lead. You see, government should give some signal that we are in a very tight situation. We all need belt tightening, and therefore we will we will start from the executive, cut our pay by say 20%, as they have done across MDAs, and then you see some of the governments, I will call them populist. What they call the special initiatives. Some of them, to me, the free senior high school, policy is consuming all our resources. It's a good policy, but the implementation and how government is managing the costs. I would have wished that government will come out and say, oh, where we are, this thing is costing us too much money. Why don't we introduce some kind of cost sharing arrangement with parents, especially those who can afford to pay. Maybe we'll pay the tuition, accommodation, and so on. You provide food and other things for your wards. That will help a lot. I don't know about teacher and nursing training allowances. All these are sort of populist policies that you want to maintain, but they cost money. NABCO costs money and all that. So on the expenditure side also, there's a lot that we can do there to cut the expenditure, you know, and then maybe the revenue that we are getting will reach further than it can now, and that's why you say we don't have money. We don't have money because we don't have enough revenue. Meanwhile, the expenditure levels are almost where they are, and that's why the balance, I mean the gap, is that you don't have money. But you should be able to do something about it. Well, we have consistently said that we need to do something about revenue mobilization in this country.
All right. So that is also the conversation we had with Mr. Dr. J.K. Kwache there, as he's talking about the fact that if you say you don't have money, we don't expect the expenditure to be skyrocketing, but that's what we see. So if government says that we are cutting 20% of MMDAs and their revenue allocation, then we should do that. We should make sure whatever we say, we're actually keeping to it. So let's see how that goes. We're expecting that the ministries and agencies, especially the very direct ministries as manages the economy, the finance ministry and the rest, will be giving us a breakdown of what was reached at the Pediasi Lodge Crunch meeting of the Q1. And then we'll see where we're taking it from there. Earlier on, we had a discussion with Dr. Jerry Monfort, who is the External Monetary Policy Advisor, EFRAG, at the European Union, and also Dr. J.A. Kwache, who just spoke. My colleague Winston Taki joined me earlier on in the discussion. I am Ania Fuampo. Thank you for joining me. This is Good Afternoon, Ghana. Thanks for watching.